think every single person on this planet needs to be educated and re-educated about climate change. We are dedicated as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to embrace this education issue.
We can look into the eyes of our children, our grandchildren, and we can finally tell them that we have joined hands to bequeath a more habitable world.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
State Congress voted to ban abortion. Alternate universe located.
Global temperatures rise.
The effects on social media on Generation Z.
To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic.
No exception for rape or incest.
Great. We've got the pleasure right now of organizing a press briefing linked with the Planetary Science Pavilion, which is a real feature here at COP30 in Belém. For COP30 to be truly successful, perhaps it must be anchored in the recognition that the stability of the planet, now at risk, is essential for equality, justice, and to address poverty, and that without action on these fronts, we will fail to improve planetary stability and we will fail to ensure prosperity for all. The panel here that I have with me is two very distinguished people. We're going to try and discuss about innovation. We're going to try and talk about environmental intelligence, perhaps adaptive policy making, if that's possible, systemic considerations, many other things that are part of this movement towards a planetary safe future rather than one that is at risk. I have Naoko Ishii, Planetary Guardian and Executive Vice President of the University of Tokyo. Welcome, nice to see you. And I have Manjana Milkoreit.
That's right.
Not bad. Are you Swedish?
I am German.
You are from Deutschland, okay. So mein Wohnung ist in Wedding, so ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. She's a researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Center and section co-lead author of the Global Tipping Points Report 2025. Let's look at what President Lula said at this COP. He said, we're moving in the right direction, but at the wrong speed. Is that what you take from what's happening? Maybe, Naoko, you could start first. And how do we change the speed? We're moving in the right direction, but the speed is a problem. How do we change the speed?
I cannot agree more with what the president said. And that has been really the challenge since Paris COP. We are always trying to push, but the direction is okay. The speed is a problem. What is missing is this idea of a system change, a transformative pathway. And why is that? Because we are still fighting against the incumbent economic system, which really doesn't account for the full value of nature, full value of the human being. So unless we really integrate those full value of natural capital or human capital or societal capital, we continue to fight against this incumbent system, which is so strong. So that what we really need to see is how we can really lever to put the lever of change those incumbent system, incentive and disincentive.
What does that echo a little of your thinking?
Absolutely. So understanding climate change as a systemic problem is, I think, key to identifying and figuring out how we can accelerate our current solutions, because it's quite clear that we need to recognize that our ecological, economic, and political systems are interdependent and they're interwoven in a way. So we can only solve this kind of wicked problem if we also have systemic solutions that move us forward. If we recognize those interconnections, we might also be able then to use system dynamics, for example, to put in place self-driving or self-accelerating feedback mechanisms towards positive tipping points in those most polluting sectors, for example, or in our behaviors, in our governance structures that might accelerate the kind of change that we're hoping for.
Is this, or maybe I'm out of step with time, but, there have been attempts to change our ideas of the economy in terms of indicators of wealth, some people prosperity or whatever term you want to use, or good progress, or whatever it is. But this idea of, going beyond GDP, is that part of the
to me,
changes?
that is really the core of system change or transformation pathway, because the current system that we are in is really the legacy of the past system. In the past, in the Holocene, that we were so small, the Mother Earth is so vast. So we really didn't have to account a lot about nature. Now we become so powerful, and our damage impacts on the natural system is so enormous. It's time for us to change the valuation system so that our economic system can take full account of, let's say, natural capital or human capital or societal capital without changing this valuation, which what really matters. We continue to fight against incumbent system. So to me, the transformative change, the core of this transformation change is how we can really change the valuation system. Right now, nature is for free goods. That's why we abuse so much, and we made so much of the damage to the natural system. That's why we have this problem of stability issue. So how we can really include this value.
Can I pick this up?
Come in.
So I think Naoko said a very key term on that is value. What do we value? So at the core of all the systems we have, our economic systems, our political and social systems, are distinct values. And currently, GDP and growth are the core values motivating all of our systemic activities. And they're also, as she said, the holding us in the current system and holding us back from transformative change, because they are defending the system as it is. And those are strongly embedded, politically defended interests, and they are very short-term values. So we look at our economic benefits over very short time horizons, but it is very important that we understand and lengthen our time horizon beyond accounting cycles, beyond even election cycles, because that is necessary to understand how our systems are currently at risk from climate change and what the values are we're trying to protect: human well-being, ecological integrity, and their interdependence.
I suppose if we have a nice audience out here, an eclectic audience of many kinds of people, all passionately interested in climate change. And I suppose to bring that home to them, you might say the current system is so bizarre because Brazil and the other countries in Latin America could cut down all the trees in the Amazon and they would have an improvement in the short term of their GDP because they could sell wood to other people, but that doesn't take into account the value of how the trees protect biodiversity, generate water for river systems, recycle nutrients for agriculture. You lose the Amazon, you've lost everything, really, but it's not priced in to the economics we have currently in nations. Is that?
That's absolutely right, Nick. Our system does put a value on dead nature once the trees are cut and then brought to our market. But we didn't really value the standing forests or living nature. And that is the problem of the current system.
Right.
So if we are able to change this valuation and to put the monetary value on living nature, it will completely change the way we live, we produce, we consume, and we live. That's something we need to think about.
How do we do this then, Manjana? How do we change the way that governments, well, basically run their economies so we actually put value into these, value into the economy?
That's a small question. So I think the kind of transformative systemic change thinking starts with an understanding of how interconnected these systems are, the relationships between economic activities and nature, human-nature relationships more generally, because nature is what sustains any of our economic activities, our well-being, our lives. And so recognizing that and building that into our decision-making model and our governance. So the interdependence between systems, between nature and economic systems, the existence of feedback dynamics and nonlinearities in those systems, and those can be both opportunities but also risks to us. And then building governance systems that respond to those. And that means, in some sense, a much more maybe anticipatory, proactive, and long-term way of decision-making. Also a more adaptive and science-based, more informed by science kind of decision-making that can be iterative and learn from the kinds of systemic changes that we are observing. So a better integration of science and governance in those systems. And also the, I think, greater utilization of participatory approaches, bringing in all the stakeholders, all the value holders that exist within our economies and within our also societies and cultural systems that have a stake in those processes, and that would enable probably different patterns of choice if we valued those different voices.
There have been these attempts, haven't there, to bring the people together in large debate-style, giving them the options for a different kind of future pathway. I mean, the UK did one where they consulted a representative number of people across the country about what would they like to see on climate change.
I think you're talking about citizens' assemblies. No?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So are we passionate about those as bringing these ideas forward?
Citizens' assemblies are a very interesting kind of new democratic governance instrument or setting, if you will, that can exist across different scales. We have local scale, national scale citizens' assemblies, but even at the global scale, we had a first global scale citizens' assembly. I believe a second of those is being launched as we're here. And those are interesting experiments or platforms because, as you said, they bring together a representative sample of people from the community they seek to engage in a specific problem. They deliberate jointly, asking everybody to learn about a particular issue and form opinions and engage in deliberation and discussion, and then develop shared visions or solutions that they carry to governments to be implemented. So those can be very innovative and interesting, important democratic spaces that might be a key component of those transformative change pathways.
What do you think?
Well, I'm a practitioner, so I think I really want to see the very practical solution to this problem. And then she said something very, very important. Nature is so comprehensive that it's complex and comprehensive. You cannot really chop. So that how to value the nature, natural capital, really needs a very important thinking. So that so the how to value the integrity of natural capital is a challenge, and it's such a local thing, and the very context-specific thing. That's a difference from carbon. Carbon is basically that the GHG and how to measure carbon is much easier than how to value the natural capital. So that the consultation is definitely one way. But another way is that if let's take a look at the landscape or that the ecosystem, a water basin, just to bring that the people who are benefiting those ecosystem or the water basin, and just to try to see how much they really would like to pay, how much they really would like to appreciate. So this is one way to do it in a very practical way, that then without taking too much of that big consultation.
Do we have a problem, do you think, with the process whereby science enters government decision-making, or the way science enters the decision-making of, say, the private sector or local authorities? I only think because we have, for example, I mean, we had some years ago, I think in 2004 or 5, was it? The Economics of Ecosystems and Biodiversity, which was a Landmark report. I think the German government had a lot involved in getting that out. And that was incorporated. UNEP had the Green Economy Initiative, which started in 2008, after the financial crisis, to try and think how could we grow the economies better by factoring in ecological factors and other things. And then we have the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The reports are produced, the governments sign off on them, but they don't follow it exactly to the letter. Is there a problem of the internalization of the science that's already existing in the way that governments make decisions about the present and the future? I just asked that question randomly.
That's a really interesting challenge, the science policy interface. And as you pointed out correctly, that might be less a problem of the science than a problem of how it is adopted or taken up, or to what extent science is actually used to inform decisions or to create understandings of what decision options exist. Because ultimately, of course, decision making is guided by political interests. And so there are other factors matter often more in the decisions that are being made than science itself. But I want to maybe mention on top of that, we might nevertheless have actually a problem with science policy interactions in this time right now, where the science on climate change is changing so rapidly. And the model of IPCC science synthesis and communication to policy in a 7-year cycle might actually be insufficient and too slow to bring the best available science to this space to be able to use it. For example, I've been working a lot over the last 3 years on the issue of Earth system tipping points.
Yes.
And what kinds of governance mechanisms are needed to respond to those risks. The science of tipping points is actually already decades old by now. And it has been in IPCC reports minimally since 2001, AR3, and now in AR7 we're going to get for the first time a chapter that is going to address tipping points as well. But the science on tipping points has not yet at all reached the negotiation space. It is not a subject of negotiations. There are no distinct governance mechanisms that respond to this, or efforts to understand how the existing governance architecture of the Paris Agreement and the ambition cycle could be leveraged to minimize risks of tipping points, so that much more rapid scientific understanding that is developing, changing our risk understanding, needs to come into this space, and it needs to do that much more frequently and differently than it does through the IPCC process.
Yeah. Let's all remember to keep our microphones well up towards our mouths.
All right.
Okay. Naoko,
On that one, I actually think that the science has been really doing a very good job. In addition to they made a progress so rapidly, so that we need to really catch up. But the problem is mostly on this implementation with the economic and the social policy side, because we are not really able to update our system to that to the message from science. Science is basically telling us we have reached this capacity limitation of the natural system. It's our turn, human turn, to transform ourselves, and we are failing to transform as quickly enough that to catch up, so that the homework, the obligation is on our side, and how we can really incorporate the fullest value of nature and the human being, the society, that is on our side. And on the justice and equity issue, if we are able to account for the fullest value of human capital and actually natural capital, and if we were able to create the economic system to reward the guardians on the ground, be it the smallholder farmers, forest people, indigenous people, the village, and the fishermen. If we were able to create that system, economic system, to reward those services that the guardians are providing for free so far, the system will be much more just and much more fair and much more equitable. So that updating the system to the message of the science is actually creating much better, transparent, and the just system going forward.
are there places that we can point to, or are there, maybe I could say, parts of places that we could point to where some of this more interesting thinking about what is value, how does an economy run with value, happening. I mean, we've had the happiness index from Bhutan, for example. I don't know if that's a good example, or, I mean, in Germany and parts of Europe, you get the sharing society where people share goods and exchange and swap things, but they're quite small scale, right? These are just nice examples of what the world could be like.
Small scale is not a problem. That's how things start, right? If they scale up.
True.
So I think maybe I can point to a couple of, let's say, legal and governance innovations where we might see this more systemic thinking emerging right now. One of those is the emergence of more and more examples of recognitions of rights of nature. Once we do that, bring nature actually into a legal system with representation and standing in decision-making and legal processes, of course, through human voices and representatives, that changes, that recognizes, first of all, our interdependence, so human-nature relationships, and brings that into the governance system itself. And that can have truly interesting effects on what we decide, how we decide, what factors we consider in those choices, not just economically, but more generally in governance systems. And the second one might be the emerging set of institutions around intergenerational representation and future generations. So we have increasing experimentation within the EU, but within numerous national governments that explore through what institutions or bodies we could bring the interests and rights of future generations into decision-making today. Because that is also one of our key challenges. None of our decision-making processes, our democratic processes, recognize and value what happens beyond an election cycle, economically speaking. And that the process or the problem we're dealing with here will affect all of the humans that will come after us. Right? I think a lot about tipping points. Some of the tipping dynamics that I'm thinking about might be triggered, meaning set off within a couple of years or maybe within a decade from now. But once you trigger them, they unfold over 2,000, 3,000 years, like our ice sheets disintegrating, irreversibly altering the face of our planet, the ecosystems that exist, what kind of human experience is even possible for an unimaginable amount of time. And none of those effects on the planet are taken into account when we make choices today. So in those kinds of new instruments to try and represent future generations' rights are starting to do that, to bring those future impacts into the choice-making architecture today.
Akiko?
Well, I'm an economist. I came from Ministry of Finance. I'm quite maybe non-romantic kind of thing. So to me, important thing is that the current economic system to be updated to incorporate all those beautiful things we were talking about. So that once we were able to incorporate those values into the current the valuation system, then we will go for this systemic change. One initiative we are working together with some of the institutions is nature on the balance sheet project initiative. The idea is now nature is free, but then once we are able to value the nature and to be integrated the financial decision making, then it will completely change our current economic system. So rather than talking about the GDP beyond the GDP or something kind of abstract, I would like to see that on a day-to-day economic decision-making does incorporate this fullest value of human capital, natural capital, and society capital. Then we can really see that the complete transformation, a way to go.
So I think what we're saying, because we're running out of time now, but what I think we're saying is that we do need this. It's a clumsy word for ordinary humans, which is systemic change. It's a clumsy phrase, right? But it's clear that the current economy as it is not working.
No.
So we need a change. And some people find that change in a single concept. So the single concept that's been running around recently was we must tax the rich more and redistribute that wealth. Well, that may be true, but it's not actually probably going to solve the whole problem at all. It's just one part of a symptom of an economy that's not functioning and not delivering on what we want now and for future generations. And I get this feeling that the ideas that you're discussing here, they are both new, but they also have a past. So it's already slightly embedded in the thinking of people, and to actually make that kind of change to the global economy. So I think it's worth pushing very hard on this right now, because it's already in the mindset of some. So anyway, I don't know if that's a terrible summary of the whole conversation, but we have run out of time. But we have a little bit of a moment, I think, because I was told that every day during these press briefings, the planetary guardians will recognize strong climate action, and they will announce a guardian of the day. And so I think it's up to you, my dear friend, Ishiko, to announce who will get the prize today. I can give you a clue. He lives in California.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his first name?
Is Gavin.
Gavin.
Right?
And the last one is?
Newcomb.
Newsom.
Newsom.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom.
You know, I'm really, really delighted. I'm honored to announce today's guardian, that being also myself the planetary guardian. Today's guardian is the governor of California, the Gavin Newsom. And he is here, actually, walking along the street, and then the people are kind of floating around him, because he is from US. Even the US government retreated from Paris Agreement.
Right.
He is here, kind of representing the still US in kind of moment, and he's also made an agreement with Nigeria that an equitable transition agreement.
Exactly.
It's so great. It's a political leadership, and that really gives us a lot of courage that the world is still very much the goodwill, and we can go on with
we
those.
We can go on, and we can get Gavin Newsom to incorporate tipping points in his California climate strategy, and maybe we can get him to persuade him to think about a new economy based on value rather than on GDP, which was invented in the 1930s.
Exactly.
For the war effort.
Yeah.
For very different purposes than what
for very different purposes. Thank you so much for being on We Don't Have Time. It was a great pleasure. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
I think every single person on this planet needs to be educated and re-educated about climate change. We are dedicated as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to embrace this education issue.
We can look into the eyes of our children, our grandchildren, and we can finally say, tell them that we have joined hands to bequeath a more habitable world.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
State Congress voted to ban abortion. Located.
Temperatures rise.
The effects on social media on Generation Z.
To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic.
No exceptions will exist.
So that was all from the COP30 Climate Hub for today, but don't go away, because tomorrow we're back for another full day of live broadcasting here from Belém. We'll invite guests to discuss solutions to curb emissions of the short-lived super pollutant gas methane. We've talked about that before. It doesn't go away. It has to move quicker at this COP. We'll also look at the role of religion in the green transition and have an exclusive one-to-one interview with the climate minister of Norway. How does he balance the fact that they drill for vast quantities of oil with the fact that Norway's very green and very helpful with overseas development support? Anyway, much, much more. Before we end this day, we'll leave you with another treat, but no, we've already played it. If you missed it, it's your fault. Watch again tomorrow. Goodbye from Belém.